I'm Phil Spencer, and welcome back to Bonkers for Boro. Well, it wouldn't be the January transfer window without talking about the hottest transfer target in the country at the moment. Of course, we are talking about this man, Ben Doak, the lad who is attracting all sorts of attention from the Premier League and beyond, giving Middlesbrough fans a small dose of anxiety as we moved into the second week of the January transfer window. Now, Ben Doak is currently on loan at Middlesbrough from Liverpool. It's been an excellent start to the season, and we will get on to that in just a second, and we will get on to Middlesbrough's hopes of keeping hold of him this month, although they do appear quite bleak at the moment. But there is a small glimmer of hope that Middlesbrough might be able to keep hold of him come the start of February and moving into the second half of the season. But before we get into that, we're just going to get into why Ben Doak is just so in demand from clubs in the Premier League. These are a few of his top-line statistics from FOTMob. You can see there in terms of the matches that he's played 21 matches, 18 of those have come in the starting lineup. 2 goals, 6 assists, a 7.18 rating on FOTMob, which is very good. You can see by the green outline around the number. And for a young player who's really getting his first sort of sustained period of first-team football, it's been just a brilliant few months for him. He kind of came into Middlesbrough at the end of the January, at the end of the summer transfer window, I should say. A player that is hugely admired by Michael Carrick, someone that was recommended as being potentially available to Jonathan Woodgate, who'd previously worked with Liverpool in their academy setup, and it was really an opportunity that Middlesbrough just couldn't turn down. But Middlesbrough have been sort of been looking for a right winger to provide competition for places for Izzy Jones for some time, and boy has Ben Doak done exactly that. His performances have been absolutely outstanding. The first few weeks it seemed like a competition between him and Jones for that spot on the right wing, but since then Ben Doak has just come Jones out of the water. He's been an outstanding player, made that spot his own, and quite frankly he's probably been one of Middlesbrough's most undroppable players during the first half of the season. So if we look at his stats in a little bit more detail, I won't go through every single line of this, but this is a bit of an overview of what Ben Doak is capable of. The stats are coming through via FOTMob once again. An outstanding website with brilliant intel on all players from all levels of the game, and you can see here just how well Ben Doak's done for Middlesbrough. So just to put it in a bit of context, so the lines that you can see in front of you, a full green line is dictating that he's sort of he's among the top performers in the Championship in his position, so you can sort of get a bit of an idea of how he's comparing with similar players in the Championship, similar wingers, players with a similar sort of skill set. And in terms of his assists, he's got 6 this season, which is right up there among the best in the Championship. Chances created 41, which is right up there. He's among the top creators in the Championship, which is no surprise. If you are a Middlesbrough fan and you've seen any of their games this season, you can see just how dangerous he is on that right wing. He gets the ball. He's got an outstanding turn of pace. He's only a little lad, but the pace that he shows is absolutely outstanding. The fearlessness as well. He's got a trick in his locker as well, and for fullbacks, he's just an absolute nightmare to play against. But it's not all a show pony. He's not someone who's just out there to attract headlines. He's really, really effective as well. You do often see with Ben Doak that he does sort of he does track back, he does defend, and he does put in a shift. But he's also someone who I think a lot of young players they do sort of struggle with almost like being on the periphery of a game at times. They're sometimes a little bit too keen. They start to drift in field, try to pick up the ball wherever they possibly can. But that means that when they do get the ball, they're not in a position to really make a difference. But Ben Doak is someone who is more than comfortable biding his time. He holds his position on the right wing and tries to isolate his defender when possible, even if it's Middlesbrough defending a corner. He's quite happy to hold his position and isolate the defender, just in the knowledge that when he does get the ball, he can be absolutely devastating. That's something that's been shown there. He's got pace, he's got power. In terms of chances created, 41 this season, which is among the best in the Championship. You can also see in terms of his successful dribbles, just an outstanding number once again with 34 successful dribbles this season, and touches in the opposition box as well. He's not just someone who hogs the touchline, not someone who stays completely wide. He's someone who does like to drift into the penalty area. He does like to get around the other corner of the fullback as well, which is where a lot of these touches come from. He's not someone who necessarily drifts into those sort of striking positions, but he's got that pace where he can get around the outside of a fullback, get to the byline. He just sort of like cut in field. So often you do find him in the penalty area, willing to make that cut back to whether it's Emmanuel Latilath or Tommy Conway or Finn Azaz or whoever it is that's going to be in the penalty area. So those touches in the box is absolutely outstanding, with 125 so far this season. So that's just a little insight into just what Ben Doak has been able to do so far this season for Middlesbrough, why he's been so good for Michael Carrick's team, and ultimately why there's been so many teams that have been interested in making a move for him come the January transfer window. So we're now going to get on to what's gone on so far this month. So I think Middlesbrough fans were a little bit anxious earlier on in the season. There's the prospect that Liverpool might recall him if he's done particularly well. Could he come back and challenge for a place at Liverpool? Could they send him on loan to a club in the Premier League? But it all seemed to go a little bit quiet in November and December, which was great as far as Middlesbrough were concerned. More than happy for this to just fly under the radar, get to February. No one's really turned an eyelid. And Middlesbrough would just be able to cruise to the end of the season. But that hasn't quite happened. The reports have been coming thick and fast from all over the English media with regards to Ben Doak. talkSPORT reported very early on that Ben Doak was a transfer target for a couple of different clubs in the Premier League, Crystal Palace and Ipswich. talkSPORT reported that Crystal Palace made an offer of £15 million for Ben Doak. Ipswich came in with £16 million, and both of those offers were rejected by Liverpool. Now, Liverpool really highly rate Ben Doak. He's a player who's got a really bright future in the game, and he's someone who is highly regarded by Arne Slot, but also the senior hierarchy at Liverpool, I guess. What that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that they're not going to be willing to sell him at any costs. If anyone's been watching Sky Sports News or listening to talkSPORT over the last 12 months, you've probably heard just how big an issue PSR is, profit and sustainability rules in the Premier League, with clubs under real pressure to sell players to effectively balance the books, to be able to afford them to go out and spend money on other players. The way that the rules are weighted, which is completely mind-boggling to me, is that clubs are effectively rewarded extra for selling their academy prospects. People who were classed as homegrown players in terms of the balance sheets. I'm not going to pretend to be all Kieran Maguire and be a financial expert, because I'm absolutely not. But that would effectively mean that for a player who's come through the academy or was signed for a nominal, minimal fee, if they were sold for a big money fee, it would effectively on the balance sheet count as a pure profit. It would mean that in terms of the incomings and the outgoing spent on bringing the player in, and then the money received for selling them on, it would be massive compared to a player who, for example, they might have bought for 40 million and then sold for 50 million. That's just a 10 million pound profit. For a player who's been brought in for nothing and sold for 30 million, that counts as a 30 million pound profit. So in terms of the balance sheet, that's how it sort of works. And for Liverpool, Ben Doak kind of falls into that sort of category. He signed from Celtic as a teenager. He's still a teenager, but he was signed a few years ago from Celtic for a minimal fee. And now it's been reported that Liverpool are going to be looking for a fee in the region of £30 million if they're going to sell him. So, as I said, he's a player who's highly rated by Liverpool, someone who they would like to keep around. But ultimately, this PSR pressure is biting every club in the Premier League. And so it is a situation where every player has a price. Ben Doak for Liverpool is valued at £30 million. If an offer came in that was in and around that sort of money, I think Liverpool would consider it. He is a player who, being completely frank about his potential, yes, he's someone who could go on and play at the very highest level, but as it stands right now, he's proven himself as a top-level championship player. He hasn't had the opportunity to prove himself as a Premier League player. So as it stands at the moment, getting £30 million for someone who isn't really proven in the Premier League could prove to be really good business and could be really beneficial for them as they look to recruit further in the future. So 2 bids have come in from Crystal Palace and Ipswich, 15 and 16 million pounds. They were rejected. Liverpool saying that no, that's not what we want. We would want closer to £30 million. Reports in the last few hours from the Guardian have suggested that both of these clubs are willing to come back in with a second bid, something in the region of £20 million. Now, obviously that's something which a formal bid at the time of recording is yet to go in. Based on Liverpool's asking price, you'd imagine that would be rejected as well. It's some way short of what they'd be looking for, but you are starting to get the feeling that, given that it's only we're only towards the end of the first week of January, it is a situation that is going to keep developing over the next 3 weeks, which is quite worrying for Middlesbrough fans, because if a club does get close to that £30 million asking price, or if they get to potentially like 25 million plus add-ons and that sort of thing, Liverpool are going to have a really big decision to make, and that for Middlesbrough is quite a worrying situation, because in a game where clubs like to be, I guess, have their ducks in a row. They like to be accountable for their own players and being effectively in control of their own destiny. Middlesbrough have no control over the situation with Ben Doak. Liverpool are in complete control. Should they decide to recall him, that's their choice. If they decide to sell him, there's nothing that Middlesbrough can do. The loan deal would be terminated there and then. He would go back to Liverpool, and then he would effectively go on and complete a permanent move to wherever he was going. So for Middlesbrough, it's really just a waiting game. Michael Carrick was asked about it after the game against Cardiff, and he said that he wasn't too worried. There was not really much that the club can sort of do about it, and he expects that Ben Doak will stay with the club for the foreseeable future. But as it stands at the moment, it is quite a worrying time for Middlesbrough, because with 3 weeks left of the transfer window, Middlesbrough are just sort of sitting ducks, really. If either of these clubs get anywhere close to that £30 million valuation, or if Liverpool have a change of heart and decide to sell him for anything less than that valuation, then Middlesbrough would be effectively stripped of one of their best players this season, and in a position where Middlesbrough would have to go out and find a replacement, which was not an easy task given just how well he's performed this season. So the big question on everyone's lips at the Riverside Stadium, fans, recruitment, Michael Carrick, is will Ben Doak stay with Middlesbrough in January? I'm sure that Michael Carrick is knocking on Kieran Scott's door every single day saying, is he going to stay? Has there been any more offers? It's quite an anxious time, really, for supporters who are really, really desperate for him to stay. And as I mentioned, I think that decision is solely down to Liverpool. For Middlesbrough, all they can sort of do is just keep plodding on. There's not really a lot that they can do to influence this situation. It's been widely reported that Ben Doak is loving his time at Middlesbrough. He did an interview a month or so ago, I think it was with Sky Sports, after one of the matches, and he was asked about his future and his time at Middlesbrough, and he was saying that he was absolutely loving it. He was praising the club and the team, and saying that the way that Michael Carrick's team set up, it was perfect for his way of playing, which is brilliant, and it's exactly what you want to hear. Noises coming out of Liverpool are that they're very happy with the loan arrangement as well. He's getting to play regular first-team football. He's being a key player. He's someone who's playing in a really attack-minded team who are challenging for promotion. So he's, in terms of experience in football, it's a great one for him to have. Ultimately, their goal would be for him to come back and challenge for a place at Liverpool. And what are Liverpool doing? They're challenging at the top of the Premier League. They're an attack-minded team, someone who likes to get on the ball, and there's a real expectation to deliver and score goals and get assists. And that's exactly what Ben Doak's doing at Middlesbrough at the moment. So as far as they're concerned, they're more than happy with what's going on with Ben Doak at Middlesbrough at the moment. So should there be no offers come in for him, I think Liverpool will be quite happy for him to stay for the second half of the season and see out the campaign and ultimately try and get Middlesbrough promoted. But obviously with transfer interest from Crystal Palace and Ipswich, most notably, it is a bit of an anxious time. Those clubs have now got around about 3 weeks at the time of recording to come in with improved offers to try and tempt Liverpool to sell. And should those offers be accepted, Middlesbrough would be powerless. We would ultimately have to let him go. His loan deal would be ripped up, and he would be allowed to move on to wherever Liverpool have sanctioned the deal. For Middlesbrough, that's not a great position to be in, given just how effective he's been this season. In my opinion, Middlesbrough would need to go out and sign a replacement for him, which would be a really difficult task. I've seen reports that the Middlesbrough are already sort of compiling a list of potential targets as a replacement for Ben Doak. It's just sensible, really, I think, given the position that we're in. I really trust Kieran Scott and the recruitment team, and they will know that this would have been a situation that could have potentially materialised. So they'll be all over this. They'll have a list of targets in mind for should they be in a position where they need to bring in another right winger. I've seen it suggested elsewhere that Liverpool have also sort of been in touch with Middlesbrough to say effectively that if Ben Doak was to move on, that there are other players who could potentially come in his place, and potentially a similar sort of loan deal for another talented young Liverpool player to come to Middlesbrough. I don't think there's been any names mentioned from that point of view, but it is something that they're aware of. Sorry. Yeah, and I think in terms of in terms of that whole situation, it's just one that Middlesbrough will just have to sit tight on. Ultimately, we do want him to stay beyond the end of the January transfer window, but as it stands at the moment, it's a bit of a worrying situation because either of those clubs could come in, meet the valuation of Liverpool, and he could be sold on. But for Middlesbrough, there is just that small glimmer of hope that because he is happy at Middlesbrough, because Liverpool are happy with him, and ultimately that there's a potential for Liverpool to get more of a transfer fee for him in the future. If he can excel with Middlesbrough in the second half of the season and then make that step up to the Premier League next term, whether it be a loan move to a Premier League club, someone like a Crystal Palace or an Ipswich, or hopefully a Middlesbrough, if we do get promoted, then that value will undoubtedly go beyond the 30 million that they're currently asking for at the moment. But it just kind of depends on their PSR situation and how under pressure they are to bring in money to balance the books, to make sure that they're not penalised like so many other clubs in the Premier League have sort of been. For Middlesbrough, it's really just a case of watching and waiting, really just hoping that the month of January goes quickly and that we get into February and that Ben Doak is still a Middlesbrough player. So I want to hear from you, because this is a really kind of delicate situation as far as Middlesbrough are concerned. For me, it would be an absolute disaster if Ben Doak ended up being recalled and sold on, because he's just been so good for Middlesbrough. If anything, I think we've been over-reliant on him. So he's been that good for Middlesbrough. So the prospect of having to replace him just really sort of fills me with anxiety. So I want to hear from you and what you think about Ben Doak and what you think is going to happen this month. Drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think about Ben Doak and what you think will happen this month with Ben Doak. And while you're at it, if you have enjoyed this video, please do hit like and hit subscribe as well. There's going to be plenty more coming in the coming days and weeks. I've got a really exciting interview coming in the next few days as well. So if you want to be the first to hear that, then do hit that subscribe button, and I will catch up with you next time.